Happy Friday. Time for week 2 of the winning ticket presented Cola alongside Eric from ETOF 21 Sports as we get ready for another edition of this show that we just started last week. Eric, what I like about this show is it's a variety. We get to do a little bit of everything. We talk about some games for tonight. We talk about a little bit for tomorrow and then for the future and beyond as we will preview an NFL division each week. Last week, we talked about the AFC East. This week, we talk about the AFC North. How you doing, buddy?
Doing well, man. How about you?
No complaints right now. Always happy to be hanging out with my good friend Eric. Also, our good buddy Jack Fitzpatrick doing the producing, pulling the strings back there, the maestro of this show. And we are very excited for week 2. We want to remind all of you, if you are in the state of Iowa, if you know anyone in the state of Iowa, friends, family members, anyone that likes to play, we encourage you to head on over to DRF Sports and sign up for a DRF Sportsbook account. You want to make sure you use our promo code. You can see it flashing across the bottom right there. FAST150 for a $150 deposit match. Right now, DRF Sportsbook in Iowa, but coming to more states soon near you. Eric, the goal of our show, to make some money for the folks out there. I have 2 baseball plays for tonight. I've got a baseball play for tomorrow. I've got 2 horse racing plays and then some football plays. So I am all over the board. Where are you tonight for baseball? A couple baseball plays for you?
I got a couple baseball plays. First one I'm going to Cincinnati. I'm taking the Brewers here. I locked them in at -120. Burns is on the mound for the Brewers. In July, 13 innings pitched, 4 runs, 2-0 with a 2.77 ERA. Pretty good form.
Kind of quietly after a bad start to the year, yeah. He's kind of quietly like under the radar picking things back up too.
Under the radar, good. And plus, he literally just pitched against this team right before the All-Star game. Now with the week off, quick turnaround, faces them again. This year against the Reds, he's 2-0. He has given up a 3.75 ERA. The one knock on the Brewers this season has been the production at the plate. They're only averaging 4 runs per game. But when you look when they face the Reds, they're averaging 5. So they're able to hit the Reds pitchers full run more per game. Graham Ashcraft is on the mound for the Reds tonight. In his one appearance against the Brewers this season, he went 4 and he gave up 10 runs. Look, I get the Reds are the it team now. They're the young team, exciting young players. But this is just a great matchup when you look at Burns versus the Reds and Ashcraft versus the Brewers. I'm on the Brewers here, -120.
Brewers and Eric riding Burnsy once again. So that's the first play for Eric. Let's head on over and talk about my first play of tonight. It's going to be a baseball play. And I'm going to go for the Cubs team total under 4. So I've got 2 baseball plays tonight. This will be my first one, the Chicago Cubs team total under 4. The reason why I'm playing that is because I'm going to lean on the Red Sox pitcher. Now, last night, this was around -120 when it opened, but the number moved all the way up to around -140. I don't usually like laying numbers that are around that big, so I try to find different ways you can target it. How can we find some value? Let's go Cubs team total under 4. Last 6 games for Bello, who's the starting pitcher for Boston, 40 2/3 inning pitched. He's only given up 29 hits and 8 walks. He's only given up 10 earned runs total in the last 6 games. 1 home run. He has a 2.21 ERA, a 1.95 batting average against. And to me, the real key, he's gone 7 innings pitched in 4 of the last 5 games. So he's going deep into the games. And Boston, they looked like they were at a point where right before the All-Star break, their season might have been over, and then all of a sudden they win 5 in a row to end the first half. They've won 8 of 9 right now. They're playing really well. I'm going to go Cubbies team total under, and the reason why, Eric, as a gambler, if I play often enough, as do you, this is one thing in hanging out with you and in talking with you a lot the last couple of years, you reiterate to me in the way you play, if you don't get a good number, if you don't get good value, don't feel forced to play something. If you don't get the best of the line, if you want to play it, maybe wait. You can play in game if the value's better, or find a different way to attack it. If you play every day, and if I was looking for -120 and every day I played -140 instead, I would not be a winner long term.
Correct.
Even if those were winners, even if I won a lot of those games, that you have to trust yourself, trust the line that you make for yourself, or the value that you believe in. That's what I did there. That's why I made a little adjustment and I'm playing under on the Cubs team total. Where do you head for your next play, buddy?
I'm going out to the Pacific Northwest. I'm going to Seattle, but I'm taking the Tigers here. I got them earlier this morning at plus 166. Look, I know the Tigers offense has been struggling, but you need to look at the numbers with Green and Baddoo in the lineup. When those guys are in the lineup, this offense is actually producing, and both of them just came back right before the All-Star game. So I think this offense is going to be a little bit better. Rodriguez is on the mound for the Tigers. What I like to do personally is it's not the first start coming back from an injury, it's the second start.
Yeah.
Velocity is going to be up, location is going to be up. That's where we're getting with Rodriguez. You kind of look back at the game against the Athletics where he got knocked up 12-3. There was like 4 well-hit balls. Other than that, he looked pretty good in that game. So I think he's going to be able to locate the strike zone against the Mariners, put him a little bit in trouble. And the one knock about the Mariners this year is they've been really poor with runners in scoring position. So if he does give up some hits, the Mariners have shown us this year they're not able to take advantage when they do. Look, and when you look at it, Tigers have been really good this year after they lose. They lost that heartbreaker 4-3 in extra innings right before the All-Star game. I believe their last 14 games, they're 11-3 straight up after a loss. So I'm going to take the Tigers here plus 166.
Big value on the Tigers for Eric. I'm also going to play a dog for my next game, Eric. I'm going to play Cleveland plus 125 in here. I'm going to roll with Aaron Savali, whose last 2 starts before the All-Star break, 13 innings pitched, 11 strikeouts, 5 hits, 1 earned run there. Just really pitching well. And then on the flip side, you have John Gray for Texas, who has not been pitching well. His last 4 starts, 19 1/3 innings pitched. He's given up 15 earned runs, 25 hits, 10 walks. He has a 6.98 ERA, a 3.25 batting average against. One thing I was reading too on Fangraphs, which is a great website that we talk about a lot, and it's a good advanced analytics site. They were pointing out that the percentage drop in his K percentage this year was alarming early, and it wasn't hurting him yet. It's one of those things that you sort of think that maybe regression to the mean, because if you're striking less people out and you're getting more bats, odds are the ball's going to be in play more often. Your numbers are going to rise a little bit. So that's something to keep an eye on with John Gray, because we might see the stats and the ERA and the batting average against and the whip. Those numbers might start to even out with the K percentage numbers were telling us earlier on in the year. So I'm rolling with the plus 25 tonight on Cleveland, and we're going to play against Texas and John Gray. So those are my 2 baseball plays for tonight. Do you have any more plays for tonight, Eric?
No, but I have 2 for over the weekend.
Okay, so let's shift from Friday to over the weekend. Good luck to anyone playing tonight. Remember, head to DRF Sportsbook, and anywhere in the state of Iowa, sign up right now. Use that promo code FAST150 if you're playing tonight on Friday night. Now, I've got a Saturday baseball look ahead and then 2 Saturday races. How about for you?
I got a Sunday NASCAR and a Saturday UFC.
Okay, let's go for Saturday for your UFC fight first. Let's go over there then, if that's we'll go in order.
I took Silva in the main event plus 145. Home is 41 now. And we've seen fighters in the UFC, once they get to over 40, they just hit that, I'd like to call it the octagon wall, and they completely fall off. Their level in the octagon drops. And we've seen that with Home. In her last couple of fights, she's really changed the way she fights. She's looking for more takedowns, looking to clinch up more, looking to get the fight to the ground. Home is facing a fighter that is now 10 years younger than her, and someone I think is a better wrestler than her, and also someone that is very dangerous in the submission game. Silva has finished her last 2 fights via submission, 1 knee bar, 1 arm bar. I haven't been impressed with Home since her return in May of 2020. I think the wear of the cage has caught up to her. She's facing Silva, who's very dangerous on the ground. I absolutely love this thing. Love this fight. I'm going to take the plus 145. Also, if you can find a prop for Silva to win via submission, I'd sprinkle a little bit on that too. But for the show, I'm taking the plus 145.
And like any great point guard or great quarterback, our producer, Jack Fitzpatrick, he hears me out of order calling for things and he just goes right to it. He's listening. He's paying attention. He's not one of those fair weather producers who's just in the back and presses the button. He's focused. He's locked in. He's listening to us. Appreciate it, Jack. We love that you're listening. Let's move along. I have one look ahead baseball play for Saturday. Let me get to that play. I'm going to go under, and a lot of these lines are already posted, which is nice because they know since it's coming out of the All-Star break and it's just the second game for a lot of these teams, they already have their rotation set for the next few days. These two guys that I'm going to attack are both pitching really, really well right now. Blake Snell starting for the Padres, Taijuan Walker starting for the Phillies. So Blake Snell's last 8 games, his last 48 innings pitched, he has a .56 ERA. He's given up 3 earned runs over his last 48 innings total. A 148 batting average against. He's given up 2 home runs in those 8 games. 2 home runs, 3 earned runs, 18 walks, 78 strikeouts in 48 innings. That is an incredible stretch for Snell right now. Both of them have been pitching really, really well. The Padres, even though they haven't been playing very great this year, in that stretch of 8 games, they've won 5 of them, and Snell's been dealing. On the Walker side, his last 12 starts, the Phillies are 10-2 in those games. He has a 2.79 ERA. In 67 innings, he's only given up 21 earned runs. He also has 56 strikeouts during that stretch, and he has a 218 batting average against. He had a really rocky start to the year, but that's a 12-game sample size. We're not talking about 1 or 2 games. That is a really, really good number. So you can see right there the stats to complement it. That's tomorrow. I think that's an early game. That is a under for me, the 8.5. So that's one of my look-ahead baseball plays. Eric, I've got a couple horse racing plays. I will shift to one of my horse racing plays right now, and then we'll get to your other play, and we'll finish up with my final horse racing play before we move on to NFL and we talk about the AFC North. So I've got one play for Saturday at Saratoga. I've got one play for Saturday at Woodbine. At Woodbine, we'll start on over there because I think this race actually goes before the Saratoga race. We're going to go to race number 7. I actually just struck a deal recently with Woodbine, so I will be handicapping races for them the whole next 6 months, the rest of their meet as it goes. A lot of thoroughbred stuff, some standardbred stuff for there too. I might even make a trip up to Woodbine later in the year, which would be really fun. I've never been to Canada, and that would be a blast. So I'm paying attention to their races a little bit more, and I'm going to look at race number 7, which is their feature race on Saturday. It's a stakes race. We're going to start to see a lot of young baby horses at this point of the year, 2-year-olds. You'll see them running at Saratoga, at Del Mar. They're running here at Woodbine. What I like to see in these races, these 2-year-olds, they're young, and like when you're a really good athlete, a lot of times it's just you're the fastest, you can jump the highest. It doesn't come down to like mental makeup or anything until a little bit later on. But when I can see that a horse already seems to be mature, knows that like can pass horses, can sit off, that really impresses me. And that's what I saw with the runner in the Woodbine 7th race coming up on Saturday. So I'm going to look at the number 2, Crafty Oak. She's 10-1 on the morning line. And in this race, a lot of her other rivals, they won their races by going right to the lead. So now you're going to have a field where all of these horses come together. They're all used to having the same running style. They all are used to going fast early. I think you could set up really, really well for Crafty Oaks, the number 2 in race 7 at Woodbine on Saturday. And again, that's a 10-1 shot. So you only need 1 or 2 of these horses to really help you out for an entire weekend.
What's your
value line?
Point? Yeah.
6. I thought this horse should be around 5. So anything over 5, that's playable to me on Crafty Oaks, who should sit a trip. It feels to me like the race is really wide open. So when I see that, I'm always going to look to the most valuable horse in that race. And that's the one I'll try to target and we'll try to attack. Again, look at Jack immediately making notes as we talk. That's Woodbine for me on Saturday. Eric, you've got a Sunday play though, right?
I do. I'm going to NASCAR, going up to New Hampshire. A lot of people fail to realize when you bet NASCAR, you can bet, instead of just winning, head-to-head matchups. Top 3, top 5, top 10. I found great value in a top 10 bet. I'm taking Aric Almirola top 10 at plus 130. Last 3 races here, he has the 10th best average finish at the track among active drivers. But when you dive into it, his last 3 finishes were 31st, 1st, and 7th. So he had gotten into a little bit of trouble last year in the second stage, couldn't regroup, was always behind the 8 ball, had some car issues, hence the bad finish. Now, take that out. So take out last year's finish, 1st, 7th, 11th, and 3rd. That's the best among the active drivers if you take out last year's finish. The Martinsville track that they raced at early in the year runs very similar to this track up in New Hampshire. Almirola finished 6th. I'm looking at track history. I'm getting plus 30. I'm getting over even money on it. So I absolutely love Almirola top 10 plus 130.
Eric finds value on that play. And honestly, you get racing, one kind of racing, and then another kind of racing from the both of us, as I'll give you one more play for Saturday. This one we have to keep an eye on because it was pouring yesterday at Saratoga. Today, they took all the races off the grass. They had a lot of scratches. If Saturday's races stay on the grass, we're going to go to race number 9. We're going to look at the number 7, Anaconda. You ever see that movie? You remember the movie Anaconda?
With Ice Cube and J-Lo, of course.
That was Ice Cube, J-Lo, John Voight, Owen Wilson, also in that movie.
Oh my God.
What a star-studded cast we had with Anaconda back in 1997. I remember going after school with one of my buddies. I was 10 years old, and we went and gone and saw that. Nonetheless, reason why I'm mentioning Anaconda, that's the name of the horse I like in race number 9. It's a stakes race. It's a mile stakes race. And in this race, it looks like there's a pretty good amount of early speed. Sort of the same type of handicapping angle with the other horse I was talking about at Woodbine. Anaconda should be able to sit maybe 4th behind a couple horses battling it out on the front end. His last race, if you bet him, you were frustrated because he finished 4th, but he was beaten less than a length. He may have won that race. He got stuck in a really bad spot. He had to tap on the brakes when he was traveling well down the stretch. Again, he was like shifting around. He was altering. He was looking in between horses, and he couldn't really get through. But he has the perfect running style for the way the race should shape up on Saturday. Again, we have to keep an eye on the weather there, though, because Friday was very rainy. She started to rain late on Thursday. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Anaconda is 6-1 on the morning line. And always, as Eric asks, you want to make your value line for yourself, right? So in my head, Anaconda should be 7-2. Anything above that, I thought that was fair value. So if this horse is 4-1 and above, I'm going to go in and make a wager on Anaconda. But we do want to keep an eye on the weather over there. That's race number 9 on Saturday at Saratoga. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend. Good luck if you're watching the races this weekend and getting involved like Eric. But we are going to get involved in the AFC North as we make the transition on over to segment 3, our final segment on the winning ticket. Eric, each week we will preview a division in the NFL. We'll go through each of these teams. We'll take a look at their odds to win the division and give some tidbits on each one of them. We talked AFC East last week. Now we talk about a division that's a really intriguing division. Just from a popular talking point, all of their quarterbacks are intriguing. All 4 of the QBs in this division. We've got Joe Burrow, who is probably one of the top contenders for MVP. He's become one of the best players in football. We have Lamar Jackson, who got the big payday. He missed a lot of time last year. When he plays, the Ravens win. When he doesn't, they don't. That's pretty much how it goes for the Browns. We don't really know what to expect from Deshaun Watson after he missed all the time. Wasn't like he was a guy who missed time because of injury. He just missed a lot of time because of off-the-field issues. The Browns still paid him. They guaranteed him a bunch of money. Last year, he struggled. Can he bounce back? Then you have the rookie, the slinger, Pickett, who was very good down the stretch last year. And you have a young nucleus for Pittsburgh and a team that never has a losing season, even when it feels like they should. This is an interesting division, Eric. It doesn't feel like I don't think there's a bad team in this division.
Should be an interesting, but the keyword should. Reality of the situation is 2 teams are going to meet our expectation. 2 teams are going to underperform. The puzzle is trying to figure out which of those 2 teams are. You mentioned the Cincinnati Bengals.
So we can go in order of those teams and their favor to win the division.
You got to figure their offensive line is going to take a big step forward. They signed Orlando Brown. They got Orlando Brown, from the Kansas City Chiefs. He's going to take over the left tackle position. When that happened, Jonah Williams got upset. He said he wanted traded. He left. He came back. They got him moving to the right tackle position. The key part of this offensive line is how much Cordell Vonson will take a step forward. He really struggled his rookie season. If he struggles, I really think they're going to pivot quickly to Collins, who's on the bench, because Burrow holds on to the quarterback more than pretty much anyone in the league. It's just something he's always done since his LSU days. So they need a good front in front of him to protect him. One of the player props who I'm really interested on is Joe Mixon. I talked to a guy down in the Cincinnati area who's in the know. Based on what he told me, Mixon's not going to miss any time. You have a young running back in a contract year. We saw this with Josh Jacobs last year. This is someone I want to be invested in, especially when they lost Pirine to the Broncos and they drafted Chase Brown from Illinois, who has some blocking issues. And Chris Evans is, I think this is his 3rd year for Michigan, more of a receiving type back. So Mixon's going to get the bulk line of the carries. I want confirmation, though, that he's not going to be suspended before I jump into any of his props.
But from a fantasy standpoint, once you were to get that confirmation, then you'd have no problem picking him.
No, I'd have no problem, especially at the current ADP. He's like in the mid third, beginning of the 4th. I'd absolutely love him.
What worries me from when you're talking about the passing, I was going to say one thing that worries me a little bit is they're good on the field, but as far as there's only one ball, so everybody can't have an amazing year and have more and more yards than they did the year before. That's going to lead to one of my plays, Eric. One of my first plays is I'm going to do something that not a lot of people like to do. I'm going to go under on a really popular wide receiver's yards total because Chase's number is at 1,300. That's
a pretty big number.
That's a monster number.
Especially for a team that could be ahead in a lot of their games.
It could be ahead in a lot of games. They're good. They have 3 receivers that could all have big years. It's a contract year for Higgins too, I think, right? Is that the case? We think Mixon, they could try to run the ball even a little bit more. That number to me is just a little too high. He could have a very good year and have 1,100, 1,200 yards and a ton of touchdowns and just not have as many yards. He was so efficient a couple years ago. He got hurt. He missed 5 games last year. Like he misses a few games, all of a sudden you're probably under. I just think there's a lot of ways we could get under. He could still have a great year. I think Cincinnati's going to be good. This isn't an anti-Cincinnati play. It's almost that they have so many talented playmakers out there. I just don't think it's going to be a situation where they need to lean heavily on Chase, maybe until you get to the playoffs. And then he's a guy that has a great matchup. And if you want to feed him over and over and over and you make your best player go make a play, but man, that number in the 1,300 range. That's
a big number. And you'll need like a lot of stuff. Like if he misses time, he came back from injury. Obviously this team's going to be good. If they get ahead in some games, that could, he's not going to get as much issue. And let's face it, Burrow, he's been banged up a little bit. If this offensive line does struggle, Burrow takes a hit, Burrow misses time, a huge ground grade in the quarterback position. So
and
I like that play.
Yeah, it's even a little higher here up at 25. And you almost wonder if the Bengals are now going to get to the point of they know that if they get to the playoffs with a healthy Burrow and a healthy Chase and like a solid defense, that they have a chance. Yeah. Right now, they now know that. Are they going to be worried about winning 15 games, lighting it up? Like that's sort of what you do when you're a younger team, right? Maybe like your first or second year when you're not sure how good you are, you just play as well as you can all the time. I wouldn't be surprised if this team kind of feels a little bit more like a veteran team now because they've been there and they've done it a few times, right? They don't need to have all the bumps and bruises or try to get all those little little nicks throughout the year. So I'm going under. I know a lot of people don't like to play unders in situations like that, but
it's always risky. It's always
right.
risky anytime you
This
take
is a good team, Eric. They don't have too many weaknesses. Like you pointed out, the offensive line, that's been a weakness the last few years, but they add to that. They were one of the worst offensive lines the last couple of years. Their wide receivers are good. If Mixon's in the mix, that's a solid running back at least. So that all of the offense from the line to the back to the receivers to the quarterback above average. We're going under. We are going under on Chase. And they've been in back-to-back AFC championships. They've really established themselves in that top tier now. Like they're a top 5 NFL team.
Yep, and I think the main thing is that the coaching staff's been together for years. They really
This is a great point. Yeah,
the same page defensively up
5
front.
years you were saying, right?
Yep, 5 years. Defensively up front, DJ Reader, who's very underrated against the run. You have Hubbard and Hendrickson that can get to the quarterback. Great D-line. They did lose Bates to the Falcons. So if there's one issue when you look at this defense, it would obviously be the secondary because there is a little bit
both starting safeties from last year they lost.
A little bit of turnover there. So if their front 4 are having a hard time getting to the quarterback, if there's an injury, Reader's been hurt before. If he can't not doing his thing, clog in the middle, Hendrickson gets hurt. There could be some issues creating havoc and letting opposing quarterbacks pick apart the secondary. But when you have Burrow, you have Chase, you have Mixon, Higgins, Boyd, everything else, it's hard not to trust this team. I think the main thing is just kind of picking the right spot to take that future in them. Because I know for me, for futures, 12, 15 to 1 is my cutoff point. So maybe I'll wait. Maybe if they lose week 1 to the Browns, look to take the future there. But right now, I'm just kind of sitting back on this team.
Yeah. Solid team. It's amazing how in just a few years, the Bengals went from a long shot team getting to the Super Bowl to now we feel really confident about their floor. And that's what a good, solid quarterback and, like you said, consistency from the coaching staff, defensive coordinator that a lot of people thought was going to get head coaching opportunities, and he sticks around. He made great adjustments last year. This is a good team. I have them in the 11 to 12 win range. Like I think they're
yeah, that's exactly where I have them too.
Yeah, I just don't know if there's enough value to play some of those numbers, and they're favored to win the division. I'd prefer taking a swing on others, but come playoff time, if this team is there close to healthy, they've proven they're a really tough team to defeat.
Yep.
Let's move to the second team, Eric, in the AFC North. We are going to go to the Ravens. Their over-under is in the 10.5 range. They are your second choice. They're in the plus 250 range, depending on when you've seen the number or how the number's adjusted. Second choice in the division. We're seeing plus 275 here. Now Lamar's back. Lamar signed a big deal. This is a team with Lamar Jackson as their starter, 45-16 over the last few years. Without him, 4-8 in the regular season. He's missed 5 games, though, in each of the last couple years. And so you start to wonder with his style of play, he runs a lot, very athletic. That does start to wear on you. Lots of bumps and bruises when you take those hits. And that's why we say sometimes in the regular season, it's better to run out of bounds or get down and not take every one of those hits because you only have so many on your bump card, right,
Yeah.
Eric? You only have so many. Some changes for this team. They bring in offensive coordinator who was recently at Georgia, was also in the NFL prior to that with Tampa and with Cleveland. He was more of a pass-heavy guy with Tampa. They want to pound the run, though. That's what they want to do overall. They have Lamar, Dobbins, Edwards, Hill. Dobbins has been sneaky good. He's averaged almost 6 yards a carry, 5.9, with 1,325 yards on 226 carries recently. So someone who I have no problem investing in this year. Offensive line solid, but they did lose a good left guard. Still projected to be an above average offensive line. For them, it'll come down to defense. Their passing defense struggled last year. They improved after they added Roquan Smith. They got much better late in the season. And, wide receivers, they're better, Eric, than they were last year overall, right? The depth of their wide receivers are better, but they still really don't have a true number one. How much can you count on Odell? Flowers is still a rookie and unproven, and Bateman hasn't stayed healthy. So if you have 2 of those guys out there, Well, that's better than they were last year.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I can count on any one of those guys individually. Maybe collectively as a whole, you're sort of rolling the dice and hope just one or two of them hit.
Yeah, I mean, this Ravens team is fascinating to me. When you kind of look at the big picture, obviously they got Lamar back, which was great, but they had a big loss in the offensive line by losing Ben Powers. Absolutely huge loss for him. Overall, though, still a decent line, still in the top five of my offensive line rankings. Greg Roman's offensive coordinator is gone. His run scheme was the basic thing in the world. Put more on one side than the defense, run that way. That was basically his run scheme in the nutshell. Everyone thinks it was this advanced thing. Basic, old school Vince Lombardi type stuff. They break in Todd Monken, the new OC from Georgia. He was the OC for the Browns in 2019 with Freddie Kitchens, and they were 22nd in the league in total offense. That's what you're switching to. And then you look at it, he wants to open up the playbook, pass the ball more. The question here is, can you win with Lamar Jackson passing and these wide receivers? You mentioned OBJ coming off a major injury. Hasn't played since he played with your Rams back in the day when they won the Super Bowl. Nelson Aguilar's here. He's going to be the field stretcher, the deep threat.
And can Odell help you in a one-game situation? Sure, right? Like when he's out there, can he make a big play? Can he be a nice decoy? Can he draw some attention? Sure. But can you count on his production for a full year? That's my biggest concern. It feels like they have a bunch of like number 3 wide receivers all in their room, right? And someone's got to be the one. But like, if you're running those one routes or you're getting more attention, is it going to be easy? Like they might have a tough time getting open sometimes too, right? When that happens.
Your comment about not having a number 1, you hit exactly in the head. They drafted Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers is exactly the same guy as Duvernay, who they got a couple years ago in the draft. So I really don't understand that draft pick. You have Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely in the tight end room. So you look at it and you're like, you look at all these names, you're like, okay, they got some pieces, but there's not the alpha. There's not the alpha in the room. That's the one thing that they're still missing. Now you have to question, can Jackson throw the ball to the outside part of the field and down the field? And let's be honest, when you look at the numbers, he hasn't shown he can do this. I know he was hurt last season. He only played 12 games, but when you look at it, his passing yards dropped by 600 yards, and the year before he played 12 games. So the same amount of games, he threw 600 less yards. When you look at him throwing to the right and the left hashes, bottom third of the league. But a thing that has happened the last 3 years is his throwing to the middle of the field, which is supposed to be his strength. That has decreased too, where now he's 19th best in the NFL, throwing to the middle of the field. How can you have this offense that's centered around a passing offense, when you have a quarterback that is showing he can't really throw the ball that well? So I don't know. I think this could set up to be a little bit of a struggle. I'm really confused on what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
You have
go
ahead, sorry.
I don't love them. I still think their floor, because of their staff, like they're well built, they're like a good organization. I don't think if things go even really poorly for them, they crater. But like if he gets hurt again, right? If he's hurt, then all of a sudden, like he's your intangible. He still helps you win a few games during the regular season. Like they feel to me like one of those NBA teams that, you know, they can win a bunch of games in the regular season, but you still worry about them come playoff time. We actually have that concern with them, but I got them in the 9-ish range, 9-ish to 10, like 500, right over 500.
I mean, that's what I have too. I mean, Harbaugh's a great coach. They have Dobbins, who I think they're going to lean on a little bit. Dobbins is very vocal how the way that playoff game they lost to Cincinnati, where he said he wanted the ball. It should have been him. And the coaches actually agreed with him, which was kind of weird. They're like, yeah, we messed up. We should have gave you the ball. I think he is going to be in a position for a good year. Defense, you look at their defense, front seven, you got Smith, you got, McQueen, Patrick McQueen, whose name I spaced on for a minute. Solid linebacker core, solid up front. Yep. You do have to worry, though, every year, the last 3 years, there's been an injury to this defensive backfield. And that's a worry point for me too. So I don't know. Ravens always bet to win the Super Bowl last 2 years. don't think I'm going to do it this year.
All 3 division road games in the first 5 weeks.
Yeah.
They play, so all 3 of their rivals in the division, they play on the road in the first 5 weeks. Like, those are 3 losable games. And they play,
last week,
they go to London.
Like,
also,
if you don't get off to that good start with how good the AFC is, your season could kind of fall off because you could be too far behind the 8 ball
to catch up. They go to London in week 6. Then they don't have a bye immediately following London. They go to London. They come back and play 5 more weeks. I don't love the schedule for them. Week 1, Houston, okay, but then you go at Cincinnati, you come home and you play Indy, then you go at Cleveland, at Pittsburgh. Yeah, I can see just a difficult schedule. Final 4 weeks aren't easy either. At Jacksonville, at the 49ers, both of those are night games. And then you go Sunday night, then you go Christmas night on a short week at San Fran, and then you go Miami and Pittsburgh to close the year. It's not an easy schedule.
That's a real rough stretch.
Yeah.
But, you got Harbaugh, one of the better coaches. And
with Lamar, and if Lamar,
I think they're going to win 9. I don't think that we've seen this year after year after year from Harbaugh. There's been an injury, they've been up against it, and he always puts his team in a position to win.
Yep. I think we're both on the same page with the Ravens. Let's go to the Browns. The final 2 teams in this division are the 2 longer shots in the division. But Eric, these are 2 teams that you and I are kind of high on this year. First, you on the Browns, and then me with the Steelers. And I think we're both just maybe a little higher overall on both of these teams, just common perception. Let's talk about the Browns. Their over-under is around 9.5. They're the 3rd choice to win the AFC North. And when you go through their overall roster, they don't have very many weak spots or very many spots that look like a hole for them. You have an offensive line that's one of the best in the league. You've got Nick Chubb, who I think is the most underrated running back. He's a top 5 running back, and he doesn't really get talked about in the best running back conversation. He's legitimately that good. Their wide receivers are kind of quietly solid. Amari Cooper had a really nice year last year. He had 1,160 yards. They also have Donovan Peoples-Jones, who kind of had that step forward year last year, and Elijah Moore comes in and joins them. That gives them a little bit of depth. So offensively, they're pretty well balanced, pretty well rounded. On the defensive side, we know Myles Garrett is excellent. They've got some help in the middle now with Jeremiah OK. Overall, they have a lot of talent. When you look at any websites that grade roster units or overall roster talent, they always are towards the top. They always show up in the top 5, top 8 or so. It just will come down to one key thing: the quarterback now.
Yeah.
They spent a lot of money. They traded. They gave a lot of capital for Watson. We can give him a total mulligan for last year. He looked bad, but he had not played a football in a long time. You can go through any number. He was bad.
Yeah, and we need to remember that from 2018 to 2020, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
Yep.
Let's flash back to the 2019-2020 season. They had a chance to go up 28-0 against the Chiefs, who won the Super Bowl that year.
In the playoffs.
In the playoffs at Arrowhead, O'Brien should have went for it, but he kicked the field goal, 24-28. That's a big difference in my eyes. That. You go in there, you go up 28-0, you've scored your first 4 drives. KC kind of got the stop.
That was a momentum. You could feel it when they kicked it.
Yeah.
Then
it was a big return by Hardman. Wheels kind of fell off. Chiefs ended up winning the game. This is the best offensive line that Watson has ever had in front of him, and they will give him time to throw the ball. Also, he was one of the better RPO quarterbacks in the league. Now you're pairing him with Nick Chubb back there. I think Watson is going to take a huge step forward, and this is going to be close to the 2020 Watson that we saw. In terms of Chubb, 302 carries last year. I'm always a little apprehensive after a running back gets over 300 touches. But with the offensive line, if this offensive line performs like it did last year, when its tackles had their worst seasons in their career and was still one of the better ones in the league, I think he's going to be fine. I think Conklin and Willis, the two bookend tackles, they're going to have an upgrade in their play this year, which is going to help the offensive line. You look at the playmakers they
Hunt's
have.
gone too.
Yep.
And they, like you said, last year he averaged a carry and a half more per game. And you also wonder, maybe overall his durability, what will help some of his durability, he hasn't really been a pass catcher for a lot of years, right? That's just a few extra touches every year, a few extra hits, a few extra times where he's not been the guy on third down. He might have to be this year.
Yep. And I mean, he's a beast in the weight room. So
he's built for it.
I'm a little, I'm still going to draft him in fantasy, but it is something to kind of monitor. The weapons on the outside, you have Amari Cooper, you have Dante V. Peoples-Jones, you brought in Elijah Moore for pennies on the dollar, and then you drafted Cedric Tillman. If Tillman would have came out the year before, he would have been one of the first wide receivers drafted, would have been a first-round pick. If he didn't get hurt at Tennessee, he would have been a first-round pick. His teammate Hyatt ended up winning the Wide Receiver of the Year award last year. Before Tillman got hurt, he was the favorite to win that award. Tillman is a first-round wide receiver talent, and they got in the mid-tier rounds, and he's your fourth wide receiver.
And so, let's compare this to what we were just talking about with Baltimore, for example, right? You got a number one with Cooper. Peoples-Jones proved last year, I think he's like a number two, number three guy.
Yeah.
And then you have Elijah Moore, who, if he's your number three, that's a great role for him. Like, he's like an overqualified number three. And then you mentioned Tillman. Tillman's in the role where he's a total wild card where you don't need anything from him. If he doesn't produce
anything you get from him,
it's just icing on the cake. And that's the way
that can come in, and there won't be a big drop off if one of those three gets hurt.
But you're not sitting there week in, week out if he has bad weeks where you need that production. They have a perfectly set up wide receivers room. It's not like it doesn't always work out that way, but just as far as where everybody is slotted, it feels perfect.
And then you got Njoku just kind of chilling there in the tight end, who's an underrated tight end.
Yep.
Defensively, they brought in Jim Schwartz. My one knock against Schwartz, he runs the wide nine, which is easy to run on. So I'm a little bit worried about that. You do have Myles Garrett. They brought in Za'Darius Smith to pair with him. Good 1-2 combo to get to the quarterback. Middle of the field, it all depends if Walker can stay healthy, excuse me. Ever since he came over from Indy, he has constantly been getting hurt, not been able to get on the field. He can cover the tight end. He's good against a running quarterback. The main reason the Browns got him is to combat Lamar Jackson. That's how good he is. And this guy can run, but he's been hurt. They need him to stay healthy. DBs, look, you got Ward, Delpit, Thornhill, and Newsome, one of the most underrated secondaries in the league. I like this team a lot. I played them plus 120 just to make the playoffs. And then I also took them 35-1 to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think they're a 9-win team, and that's one or two bounces makes you a double-digit win team, right? When you're there. So we're going to find out early because they have the opposite of the Ravens. They get all three division rivals they get two of them at home in the first 4 weeks.
Yep.
So right off the bat, you play your three rivals, two of them at home, where you could get off to a great start in the division and have advantages over everybody else. That's what they need. And then everyone starts to buy in. I still have some question marks about Stefanski overall. I've gone kind of like a roller coaster on him. I thought I was really high on him to start. Then I was really down on him. I've kind of settled around in the middle with him. So we'll see. You're high on the Browns. The team that I'm high on this year is the Steelers. I think they can take a really big step forward as we head into our final team in the AFC North. I look at this team, Eric. They got a pretty good start to the season looking at their schedule. They play San Francisco right off the bat, and we don't really know what's going to happen with them from a quarterback standpoint. So you want to catch San Francisco early, and I think the number in that game is like San Francisco minus 2.5. So Pittsburgh's like a plus 125 money line home dog. That's when we love playing Tomlin in this situation.
And also, real quick, just to piggyback, hypothetically, let's play devil's advocate here. Trey Lance looks poor, who can't go because of injury. Brock Purdy's not hurt. Brock Purdy's still not healthy yet. Who's their quarterback? Like, you know what I mean?
Sam Darnold.
Exactly. So
Sam Darnold, your boy. Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know. I think this is a bet that you got to lock in, that you're going to talk about sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Pittsburgh has not had a losing season with Mike Tomlin. And I just think there are some major positives for them. So, looking at their schedule, I don't see any real parts of the schedule. Like the last 3 games of the year could be tough. Other than that, I think they have like good little stretches. I don't see it 3 or 4 losses in a row. Watt should be healthy. You compare him with Highsmith. Last year, Watt was in the lineup. The Steelers are 8-2. They allow 16.9 points per game. They only allow 288 total yards. When Watt is not in the lineup, they went 1-6. They gave up over 25 points a game, and they gave up 390 yards. So 100 more total yards per game just in the games that Watt was out. He's going to be back. You get the growth and development of Pickett and Pickens. Pickett, final 8 games of the year last year, he had 1 interception. Pickens had 801 yards, 15.4 yards per catch. He had 19 contested catches, which ranked him 3rd in the league last year. Freiermuth, first tight end since 1990 with 60-plus receptions in each of his first 2 seasons. And Deontay Johnson, what crazy number last year, Eric. He had 147 targets, 86 receptions, 882 yards. He didn't have 1 touchdown. That's
most scrimmage yards ever without a tutty.
Which is crazy. And I would imagine this year he scores touchdowns early and more than likely just because it'll even out from what happened last year. So you have Pickens, you have Johnson, you have Freiermuth, nice young playmakers with a young quarterback. Watt's healthy. They bring in Allen Robinson. I don't know what to expect from him, but he's at least like another guy out there. If he's your 3rd or 4th wide receiver, that's fine. You don't really count on him all that much. The offensive line should be better. And if they can run the ball better, I feel like this team can be a little sneaky. Again, they're like the Ravens. They have a good floor with Tomlin. You know that he doesn't have them. He doesn't allow many flat games. He always has them up for home games. They're always a tough place to play. Their defense is strong if Watt's out there. They won 6 of their final 7 games last year. The only one of those games they lost, it was by 2 points in a game where Pickett had a concussion and Trubisky came in the game and threw 3 interceptions. They won the last 4 games of the year. But what's crazy, 16 years where they've been over 500, but 14 since they've won a Super Bowl.
Which is really crazy. Look, I'm just going to be upfront. I'm not a Kenny Pickett guy at all. I was low on him when he came out, but I did think they did a good job at addressing their biggest need going into this offseason, the offensive line. They traded for Isaac Emmanuel. I totally butchered that name. I'm sorry. Drafted Broderick Jones, shores up the left side of the line. This line will do a better job protecting Pickett than it did last year. Do a better job creating some running game lanes for Najee Harris. I know Harris had a down season last year, but we need to remember he had that serious foot injury right before the season. Was never 100%. Could be.
And the second half of the year, Eric, just to complement what you're saying. So he started the year, his first 2 months of the season, he only averaged 3.3 yards per carry and 45 rushing yards per game. He only had 1 touchdown. After their bye, it moved up to 4.1 yards per carry, and he went up 7 to 74.8 rushing yards. So 30 more yards per game and 0.8 yards per carry more with 7 total touchdowns post-bye after he got a little bit healthier.
Yeah. And then you mentioned Deontay Johnson. Obviously, my first bet is with this team. First game, if I can get over plus 200 or greater, anytime touchdown for Deontay Johnson, I think they're going to make sure that he gets his touchdown, like you said, early and often. I know Pickens is kind of this guy everyone's kind of talking about, going to take a big step forward, a fantasy football darling. I'm just looking at targets. since
Yeah.
since Pickens took over. When Pickens took over, no, sorry, when Pickett took over.
That's got to be tough for a lot of people. That's going to be a tough one.
When Pickett took over, Pickens had 63 targets. Diontae Johnson, 120 targets. That's more than two. That's almost 2-1. Excuse me.
It was just Pickens had some of the big plays. Yeah. And so the per catch numbers were huge, which a lot of times are harder to sustain.
Yeah.
Right. It might be good and helpful in real football because it draws a lot of attention. But like if you're talking about fantasy and props and stuff like that, Pickens may be a little overvalued this year.
And because of that, I think Johnson's yardage total is going to drop. And they have 73 abandoned targets. They drafted Washington, the kid from Georgia. He's a blocking tight end. He's not going to get much run in the passing game. And then you brought in Allen Robinson. Robinson gets 50. There's still 23 targets kind of lurking that's going to be distributed amongst the players. I'm going to be interested in Diontae Johnson's receiving prop over once it gets a little closer to the season, because I think this Pickett's hype is going to drive that number down. Defensively, you mentioned it. They have Watt, pair him with Hayward up front, which is huge. Highsmith running from the edge to get to the quarterback. My worry point for them is their back four. Historically speaking, their secondary has always been legit. Neal graded out as the 70th best safety out of 88. Little concerned about him. Also, I want to see what happens with Porter. Porter's coming in from Penn State, going to be their starting cornerback. Is he allowed to get away with as much hand fighting as Sauce Gardner did? If he did, I think he's going to be fine. But the one thing we've seen,
this is their weak spot on the defense for sure.
The one thing we've seen with rookie DB is they get flagged for a lot of the hand fighting. For whatever reason, Sauce Gardner wasn't flagged for it last year. If Porter gets the benefit of that flag, I think they're going to be fine. But if they're tossing a lot of flags for the legal hands, I think it could struggle a little bit.
My two biggest worries are this is on the defensive side, and then the offensive side. More than personnel, it's Matt Canada. I just don't think very highly of him as an offensive coordinator. He's not very creative. You watch the play. Even if you're someone who doesn't have a really keen eye for football film, if you're just like a novice fan, you love watching football, but you're not someone breaking down film a lot, you can watch the Steelers and just see they're never creative. They never have any movement. There's no motion. You don't see play action. They run play action at one of the lowest percentages. And then you look at a team like the 49ers, and they're the opposite. And they throw Brock Purdy in there, and it's not like Jimmy G was the best quarterback in the world, but they were successful because they create and design like unique and creative plays. They don't just stand back, hand the ball off right up the middle to the running back, and Najee Harris gets you 2 yards. Like, you can't do that. That's my biggest concern. I don't really trust Matt Canada, but I do trust a lot of the other pieces. I do trust Tomlin. I think this is a team that I would bet to win the division more than I would bet to win a Super Bowl, because I still don't think they're a complete enough, good enough team to win 3 or 4 games in a row against the best teams in the playoffs. But in a competitive division, you never like to root for injuries, but if like the Bengals and the Ravens, these teams that are a little above them, if they have 1 or 2 injuries, all of a sudden this division is ripe.
Yeah, and you can kind of play it out in your head. Watson never takes a step forward. The Browns struggle. Stefanski's out. They never get back on it. Burrow gets hurt. Chase gets hurt. The defensive secondary of the Bengals gets picked apart.
Down the stretch, they're not as worried about winning 12 or 13 games as they are like, hey, let's just get into the playoffs, and make sure we have a healthy guy. This team,
and they were 2-4 at one point last year.
Yeah,
like the Bengals were. We need to remember that they struggled out of the gate.
This is one of those young teams where if they get off to a good start, they're going to try to win every single game they play, and they're going to be really into it. They're going to be really excited. It just comes down to a good start. I'm going to take a flyer, Eric, on a couple plays for Pittsburgh this year. And one of them's in week 1. I had already mentioned in week 1, I'm playing the Pittsburgh Steelers money line against San Francisco at plus 124. And then the other 2 are season long. I think you can find value on the Steelers to win the AFC North. They were plus 600. We were looking at a DRF Sportsbook. They are the 4th longest choice in the division and the longest shot of all 4. And then to make the playoffs, the Steelers are plus 145, right in that range. So, look at here, the Steelers plus 600. Look at the playoffs. To make the playoffs, it's at, plus 145, floated up to 150 now. So it's right in that range. I think that's great value for both of those. You take a little swing on the division. You play a bigger chunk of your bankroll on to make the playoffs. Those are 2 of my favorite ones, and I'm going to play them in week 1 on the money line at plus 124. In less than an hour, we got you baseball, we got you NASCAR, we got you horse racing, we got you division preview in the NFL, 4 different teams previewed. We got you Friday, Saturday, Sunday wagers, and future wagers all in 1 hour. That is a lot of ground covered on this week's edition of the Winning Ticket. Folks, don't forget, if you are in the state of Iowa, sign up for a DRF Sportsbook account right now and make sure to use our promo code. You can see it scrolling across the bottom, FAST150. It's great. As soon as Jack could sense I was getting ready to start talking promo code, he flashed it right back up there. We're getting a good feel now for the host, the producer. It's all that chemistry. It's coming together. For Eric, I'm Gino. Thanks so much, everyone, for hanging out with us on the Winning Ticket. Make sure to follow Eric, Etoff21 Sports. Give me a follow on Twitter. It's me, Gino B. We'll be back next week. Every Friday, we'll be here 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. The show will be just like this. We're going to try to get you a bunch of winning tickets.